Tractored.
He's behaving this time, I guess.
Murder him! Nice. Today I'd like to talk about a Warlock build, a hybrid build that in simple terms is the jack of all trades. Typically, when you think of Warlock meta, your first guesses are probably going to be a Sanguine build, or a Speaker side build. Effectively, you're the standard well user that pops a super and maybe slaps on Divinity so your team can stop role-playing as Stormtroopers and missing every shot. But this build, a hybrid build, can do that and so much more all in one. The core concept for this build is to quite literally do every job that a support player brings to the fight while also having respectable DPS to contribute on top of that. Here's a brief list of things this build can accomplish. First off, it protects your team with Well of Radiance or with Song of Flame. Speaking of Song of Flame, this makes you literally unkillable. That's not an exaggeration at all. Song of Flame gives you a massive 90% damage reduction. You actively would have to go Phoenix Dive off of a cliff in order to die with Song of Flame active. It's absurd. Anyway, so you give your team DR. While providing protection, you also would be buffing their damage with either Song of Flame giving you Radiance for 20%, or Well of Radiance giving your team 25% in empowering buff damage. So there's some give and take between Well and Song of Flame there, but we'll get back to that. Next, on top of protection and giving your team damage buffs, you're also going to be debuffing bosses by 30% thanks to running Tractor Cannon in your heavy slot. So thus far, we have damage reduction for your team, buffing the damage of your team, and debuffing the enemy so your team can do even more damage in total. But we're not done there yet. We're also incorporating crowd control into this. Specifically, I'm talking about controlling bosses. For those of you unaware, a lot of bosses in Destiny can actually be staggered and stun-locked almost infinitely, as you may have seen in the intro to this video. One of the most common methods to doing this are ignitions. By igniting an enemy, they will stagger and be locked into place for a few seconds. The great part about this is, with this Warlock build, you can potentially stun-lock a boss for the entire damage phase duration or until the boss is dead, and that is thanks to our melee Incinerator Snap. In simple terms, you go full-on Roy Mustang on some bitch and light them up on fire with an ignition. Now you might be thinking, how are you getting your Incinerator Snap back instantly to keep using it? Well, there's actually multiple ways to do this, and it can be done including on Well of Radiance rather than Song of Flame. But let's start with the basic method first. Song of Flame, when activated, gives you significant regen to your grenade and melee, essentially giving it back to you every few seconds. This is the standard method of performing the stun lock on bosses, but there are other methods, including extending the amount of snaps that you get. On the flip side, Well of Radiance does provide you with more overall damage thanks to it being a higher buff than the Radiant that you would get from Song of Flame, but you would not get the instant regen of your snaps after using Well of Radiance, except we can actually fix that problem, to an extent. Let's talk about the exotics you would use for this build in both forms. Since we're talking about Well, let's start there. If your preferred method is going to be Well of Radiance, your best choice for this particular setup, in my opinion, is going to be Apotheosis Veil. If you don't know what Apotheosis Veil does, it's an exotic helmet that gives you instant ability regen for yourself and your allies when you activate your super. As an added bonus, when your super ends, or in this case, the moment you activate Well of Radiance, you will temporarily gain increased melee and grenade regen. Essentially, this allows you to snap bosses roughly 5 to 6 times consecutively, igniting and staggering them each time. This setup allows you to snap a boss, causing them to ignite and stagger, then give your fire team the maximum amount of empowering damage with Well, while also simulating Song of Flame temporarily with the instant melee regeneration, allowing you to continue igniting the boss. So the trade-off for the Well version essentially is you get more damage for your fire team at the cost of not having as many snaps as Song of Flame. Speaking of which, let's talk about that variant. While Song of Flame has a lower empowering buff compared to Well, it makes up for it in having absurd levels of provoking and stunning bosses. For the exotic armor slot, since Song of Flame can be ran on Prismatic Warlock, you have two options here. The first is going to be putting on an exotic class item with the perk combination of Star Eater Scales and, you guessed it, Apotheosis Veil. What this does is it allows you to both buff the damage of your abilities while in Song of Flame, and it'll also give you the effects of Apotheosis Veil once your Song of Flame runs out. So after you've already turned Percy's into fried chicken with 10 Incinerator Snaps from Song of Flame, Apotheosis will then give you another 6 seconds of bonus ability regen after that, just in case you wanted to upgrade from Fried Chicken to Extra Crispy. I'd also like to mention that if you don't have Apotheosis on your class item and instead you have Necrotic Grips, that will also work just to give you a little bit of extra damage. Now, if you don't have any exotic class items because you haven't unlocked them or anything like that, you can still just run the standard version of Apotheosis Veil while on Prismatic and still get the same results. Also, as an extra note, since some may ask, Syntheseps do not work with Song of Flame melee snaps, but Star Eater Scales do, and that's why it's the suggested role rather than Syntheseps. Now moving along, we talked about buffing, debuffing, and stunlocking the bosses, but where's the damage coming from? Your main source of damage is going to be first igniting bosses with your snaps, followed by energy weapons, more specifically shotguns that roll the Trench Barrel perk. Any shotgun will do, but by far and away the perfect candidate for this slot is going to be Perfect Paradox. Trench Barrel is a perk that gives you bonus damage to your weapons every time you use your melee, which is the entire point in this build, and then Perfect Paradox has an origin trait called Cast No Shadows, allowing you to reload ammo from your reserves every time that you deal melee damage. The concept here is you melee to ignite and stagger a boss, then you follow up with Perfect Paradox, unloading 3 to 4 shots, then use another Incinerator Snap, which will in turn stagger them again and ignite them. Then it'll also reload your ammo into your mag. Essentially, this gives you an infinite money glitch to reload all of your ammo into Perfect Paradox without having to manually reload in a damage phase. The nice part about this is it's very easy to go farm a Perfect Paradox and is currently available to focus at Failsafe in the Helm. If you're curious on what role I use, it's Appended Mag, but any mag perk will do, plus Trench Barrel, plus Dual Loader. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, what the hell is Dual Loader? I've never heard of that. Dual Loader is a perk that 99% of people don't even know exists. It loads 2 additional shots at a time when reloading, so it's a perfect perk to have for this setup. I also want to give a small shout out to the shotgun from the Sundered Doctrine dungeon, which is called Unvoiced. Now, it has some nutty damage perk combinations and potential with redirection and bait and switch. The issue is, farming this is a nightmare in comparison, as you have to do Sundered Doctrine, and then hope you get the drop of the shotgun, and then hope you get the perfect roll, as opposed to farming some random seasonal activity that's very easy for Perfect Paradox, and focusing it directly at Failsafe. Now let's talk about the kits. So first we're going to start with the Solar variant, which is the Well of Radiance variant. I'm just going to talk about things you should have on to make this build more efficient. Everything else that I don't mention, you can just swap out or tinker however you want. So first is going to be Phoenix Dive. The main reason for Phoenix Dive is it has the lowest cooldown of any class ability that we have. It also synergizes with one of our aspects, which is going to be Helion. Helion is just another way to scorch and then eventually ignite targets and get bonus damage while you're DPSing. And then I also have Icarus Dash because I like Icarus Dash. I like moving around faster. If you want to swap this out, you totally can. Then we, of course, have Incinerator Snap as our melee. This is the main portion of staggering bosses. You just go bang and they stagger. Then we have any grenade you'd like. I have Healing Grenade just for safety reasons, but you could technically swap this out for like a Fusion Aid if you want more damage. Now for Fragments, the main one you want to have on is Ashes. You apply more Scorch stacks to targets. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Then we have Benevolence. This is mainly just to get your abilities back faster in the event that you're in a long damage phase, and you can actually get some extra ability outside of when you're in Well/Song of Flame. And then we have Singeing. Your class ability recharges faster when you scorch targets. So given that you're going to be scorching the boss non-stop, you're eventually going to get your class ability back much faster than you naturally would. The last slot, you can put whatever. I currently just have Searing, because when you defeat scorch targets, you get your melee back. So if you're running a weapon in your energy slot that's like a BXR or something that can scorch targets, you can get your melee back and snap other targets besides the boss before you go into damage. Now, as for Prismatic, your super is of course going to be Song of Flame, and once you pop your super, you will get the Incinerator Snap melee. Until then, you can do whatever the hell you want with the rest of the kit. So what I ended up doing was just turning my Warlock into a Lightning Surge killing machine for trash mobs until the boss phase. So I have Lightning Surge, I go in on a trash mob, kill all of them, I get Amplify, which gives me more damage resist, I get Devour, which heals me on every kill and also gives me Grenade ability regen. It also will give me Radiant for our first fragment, so I will have bonus weapon damage as well. For my grenade, I have Vortex Grenade because I have Facet of Dominance to weaken anything I want before we get to the boss. Now for our melee, you have 2 choices here. You can either run Arcane Needle, just have 3 melee charges so you can abuse Lightning Surge to its maximum potential, and then just go into Song of Flame and then get Incinerator Snap through that. However, if you're running the Apotheosis build, and you're in a boss damage phase that will last longer, Song of Flame super will, then once it's out and Apotheosis activates, if you have Arcane Needle on, you're obviously going to get a bunch of Arcane Needle melees instead of Snap. So if you want to use Apotheosis to its max potential, you want to have Snap on by default when you go into that boss damage phase. For the rest of the fragments, like I mentioned, it's for my lightning surge build, so they're melee oriented. I have balance to give me melee energy. I have sacrifice to give me darkness energy when I get kills with a light buff, which is super easy. And then I have protection to give me bonus DR when I'm surrounded. You could opt to swap some of these out for something like Courage to give you bonus ability damage if your teammate wants to apply like Chill Clip with Tenacious, or you end up running Arcane Needle. That's your choice, up to you. That's totally optional if you'd like. For the artifact, the great thing is, even when this artifact is gone, this build will still be great, but for the time being, there's really 3 main things you want to abuse, and that's going to be Flashover, Defibrillating Blast, and Limit Break. Now, Flashover and Defib come in handy when you're playing with a Titan and they pop their Barricade, so you might as well abuse the Barricade and get bonus healing, as well as bonus damage from your Bull Charge procs, and you become Amplified, which gives you DR. Then, for Limit Break, fun fact, this works with Well, so all you gotta do, really, before you pop your Well or your Song of Flame, is just get a solar buff. You can get this by just doing your Phoenix Dive, which gives you Cure, which is a solar buff, or if you just have the natural Radiant up before popping your super. For the armor mods, the only things you want to keep in mind are your boots and your class item. The rest are very cookie cutter and generic. You have Resists, Reserves, Dexterity for your shotgun, Heavy Ammo Finder, Siphon for orbs, etc. Now, for your boots, you want to have Kinetic Weapon Surge on for your Perfect Paradox, but there's a thing you can do prior to that damage phase. So what I do personally, you don't have to do this, but it's just optional, is you put on regular boots with regen mods like Absolution, Recuperation, Better Already, and this is because this allows you to hold your armor charges without them decaying the entire time until you get to a boss damage phase. That's because I have Special Finny on, so I can hold armor charges but not activate them. I just don't do a finisher and I keep all 3 charges. Then, when a boss damage phase is about to start, I simply just put my boots on, and now I have a full, 45 seconds or whatever of surges to use on the boss, basically lasting the entire time. Otherwise, you might go into a damage phase with no orbs, and nobody makes you an orb, and then you don't have surges, so your weapon does less damage. Anyway, that is the build. It's pretty fun. Any Warlock mains out there, I suggest you try it out, especially if, given in the future, Bungie might hit Sanguine or something like that, and this just becomes even better, especially in the meta where we're getting surrounded by enemies and mobile bosses that run around us that we could probably stun. If you enjoyed the build or the video, please consider subscribing today. It does help the channel grow and is much appreciated. If you want to go the extra mile, you can leave a like and or comment below as well. If you don't know what to leave as a comment, you could leave hybrid as the comment. Also, check out the socials if you'd like in the description. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.